I've started it. I'll record it for you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so it's we presented the first roadmap to the conference, and nothing happened until then. From then, so it's really the first discussion after the conference about this roadmap. I have a few slides, not too many, since we wanted mainly to discuss things. So just to repeat that for those who are new, that FDO is the FDO Forum is in a phase shift after the conference. So we said that the first phase was committed to getting the basics done to understand what FDOs are and so forth. So we got a couple of specifications document out there. They're all open now for comment to everyone. And we're still busy, of course. And we're now in a phase 2 where we try to identify errors, which we made certainly in the document. So we're looking to the documents again. What we also need to do is now to identify gaps and opportunities, and we want to address them with open workshops. So as you can see at the bottom, the first content workshop in this series of workshops is mid-February. We need to fix the date. Well, I think it's now 16th, 17th, yes. So 16th, 17th of February, we will have the, we will have first, sharing the screen has stopped due to some reason I don't understand. Well, I will not make it full screen, so I hope you still can see it. And so in 16, 17 of February, we will have the first workshop in this series of workshops, which is on the relation between FDOs and operations, where we need to go into much more detail. I've sent around today first announcement, and that will also be sent to everyone who is on this large email list. So, there was a lot of comment about the openness of FDO Forum. I think everyone understands that in the first part, in the first phase, we just worked in working groups. Everyone could join by just registering or sending an email. And in the phase 2, we are now running really open workshops to everyone. And of course, in the working groups, if you want to participate in the working groups, we will look at what has been discussed and work on it. Yes, so the roadmap goal for today, very briefly, is discussing the roadmap document as it is, but also to understand what other people have in their mind, what other people would suggest to do. And it's meant as a kickoff of a more regular interaction. We also have to see how frequently we have to do these roadmap interactions, perhaps all half year or so, we will see. We reserved quite some time, 50, so 3 hours, but it can be shorter. So it's just to reserve it. The current roadmap document is you can find here. It was also on the documents, and I will copy it into the chat.
I just sent it.
Huh? So here you can see it. Well, what will happen today? I just made my welcome talk. Larry will speak a bit about the goal of road mapping, very short, and then Ulrich will hit to some major discussions, and then we simply open the discussion and just listen and discuss. Here is a set of documents which you all have seen in the announcement of this call. So I think I can stop here. And if there's no direct question to us, then I would suggest that Larry should continue, but I see a hand up from Steen.
Yeah, Carol was already saying it for me, so I guess I agree with moving to that phase 2, right, of opening, basically, I guess, understand you mean beyond just the forum, whoever have already been interested, so anyone can also find the FDO specifications and the guidelines and so on, right? So I guess that's the next step. So put them back on the website because they used to be there, but now they're not. So I guess that's the next step for phase 2. So that you don't need to know the secret Google Drive link, because otherwise you're not going to get feedback from anyone outside the forum anyway.
Yes. So certainly, Cian, thanks for the comment. Certainly we have to improve, but I would like to tell everyone again that we don't have any funding. So we're working on a voluntary basis, and we're not that good in shape with providing all the documents and so forth and so forth. We're trying to improve, but I hope that everyone understands that. We will certainly try to improve this year by getting more support, funding for support, but this will take a bit of time. Any other direct comment? Otherwise, I would just say, Larry, continue and tell us something about the general goals.
Yes, I have a direct comment. Where is the minutes document? Because if I'm taking over as your PA, Peter, which I seem to be, can I, where's the minutes document that we're making the minutes for this meeting in?
Oh, that's what we never did, Carol. We can start doing this.
We must start, if we're going to start being open and follow professional practices for standards, we must do this.
Yes.
So now's your time. Do it now. Make your Google Doc now and share it with us so we can all add in our notes, right?
While Larry will talk, I will open it and set it into the chat so that everyone can have a look and comment.
And edit it.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And
good.
edit it. And let me also say our practice was always, Carol, that we look at all the comments and listen to the recording and come up with some kind of report, right? Which then is open and can be commented again. So that's what we will certainly continue to do.
The difference is, sorry, just to close that piece, the difference is when we're going to be open, as we are in the second phase, it isn't enough to say we listened to the comments and we made a new document. You have to track the comments. And demonstrate them. So
fully clear, Carol.
Okay, good.
Understood that.
Just time your new job.
Yep. Larry. So I will create this document.
All right. Is my volume okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I've continued to have trouble with a brand new laptop, which I otherwise love. So I'll start by just emphasizing Peter's point about organization and so on. We would love to have someone dedicated to making sure all these things happen, but we don't have such a person. I'm just going to make 4 brief points before we move on to Ulrich. The first is that we've set an extremely ambitious goal here. This idea of fair digital objects. That goal, or our desired endpoint, described in general terms in a roadmap paper. So I recommend looking at that. It's a very high level description, but I think it's accurate. Certainly comments welcome on that. It's in the beginning of the document. Given that, I firmly believe we need to make progress one small step at a time. At this point, if we tried to fix all of the precise and detailed technical infrastructures and, more importantly, social agreements that will eventually be needed, we can't do that at this point in the FDO evolution. We have to iterate on these things, and we have to attack problems that we can make progress on, as opposed to just the flabby mess that is everything all at once. And I think a key to making that progress would be interaction between the technical specification work and prototyping and testbed work. We can describe this stuff in the abstract, but until we try it, we don't know what we don't know. So we will discuss gaps during this meeting, I assume. There are some obvious known gaps, but there are also unknown gaps. We don't know how some of these specifications will work out. They may be too ambitious. They may not be ambitious enough. I don't know if this topic will come up, but we've rearranged the working group somewhat. We had the difference between the infrastructure group and the technical specification group. Those have been put together, and that new group, which I think will still be called the TSIG group, although I don't remember the outcome of that meeting, we'll have set up regular meetings with prototype implementation groups to examine how the abstract specifications work in progress. My final point is to say again, which we've said a number of times, that what we want here is a scalable level of interoperability with a minimal set of specifications. So that's the point of defining the specifications and interacting with prototyping. We need to cut away what is absolutely required to get to some minimal where we can still achieve the desired goal. Given the background of many people on this call, our model in this regard is TCP/IP, and those are my 4 points. Any questions or comments?
Can you all close down your microphone, please? Go ahead, Larry. I will check.
Okay. So, and those are my 4 simple points. I don't see any. Well, I don't know how I can say. I don't see any hands up in the screen that I have. If that's the case, then I think we can move on to Ulrich.
Okay. Thanks, Larry. Any comment? Well, then let's move on to...
Could Larry
Carol.
sorry, can Larry put his 4 points into the roadmap meeting notes that we've now opened, because I only managed to type in your last one, Larry.
My pleasure. So those I was looking at, in fact, the notes I have made. So I'll figure out where the document is and paste them in.
I put it in the chat, the link, Larry.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Ulrich.
So I'm unmuted now, I think. Okay. Yep. So yes, I will start then with a couple of slides about possible gaps, and this is there is a simple structure on that. First, I will head to the generic gaps. There will be some organizational things and some technical, of course. And we have then the open question round first, of course, to this talk, and then in general about the gaps and the roadmap. So the generic tasks, as they are described in this roadmap document, is first of all, we need a glossary of terms and current adaptation of documents. This is something which already is started, and the document for this is pretty fine already. But as you can imagine, there will be new terms coming up, and we have certainly ensure that those terms which are described there are really coherent, used in all the documents we have. And then we need a summary of all the relevant specifications. Then there is the roadmap that has to be described for standardization. So there is a process we have started already with the Dean and other standardization organization. Dean is the equivalent in Germany for the ISO standards, and it's part of the ISO. But in Germany here we have a couple of people which are really interested in standardization for FDOs, and they probably will do the work, or a lot of the work that has to be done to make out of all these good ideas we have a real standard. And then, of course, Peter mentioned that, and also Larry, we need a reference architecture, and in this reference architecture, we also need validators. So we need to know whether an FDO is an FDO, essentially, and parts of it are parts of an FDO. And then, of course, we need people who adapt this, and there a lot of early career experts are needed to come up with code and application development. Then I've here a slide which is a conceptual view on FDO, so as we have discussed this first in BIC and then in TSIG. This is only a part of a bigger picture, and I'll show the bigger picture later. But perhaps for the next for the discussion, it's important to know what we are talking about. And as FDO also has a PID, but what we are looking here at is the structure of what we call an FDO record. And the idea here is that we, in this FDO record, collect additional information about the FDO, which is easily to understand for machines and also for humans. And the idea here is it's not a good, it's a general idea. In these records, one collects attributes essentially, which have key and value. And there is one thing which is also used in other description environments. The idea here is that the key has a kind of a uniqueness, and it refers to a definition which essentially constrains the value. That means that, for instance, if you have an attribute author, then this attribute author, there is a definition behind it and the description language which says which values are actually allowed for this key. And here we use this key essentially as a reference to the attribute definition. And this reference in general, again, is a PID, which then refers to this definition, which again has to be an FDO. And then this attribute definition has a shape, an internal structure, which is able to constrain the value. Essentially, this is the idea that from this internal structure, one can derive directly by a standard algorithm a schema for JSON or XML or whatever you want. And these definitions, again, then are stored in attributes registries. Then we have a FDO profile. This FDO profile constrains the FDO record itself, because the profile essentially says which attributes are allowed, are mandatory, and so on. So this is the very simple structure, not quite simple, but it's rather simple, especially compared to the diagram I'll show later. But this conceptual view already gives some hints about what there is somebody not closed his microphone or her microphone. Could you have a look at that? It's a little bit distracting. Thank you. So the next is then, we have talked about type and profile registries. The idea is in the FDO environment to have a interoperable registry landscape. And for this, there are certain prerequisites one has to have. So obviously we need a detailed specification, and we need example implementations that are referring to these specifications. Also, we need a decision process for the FDO records, so for the mandatory and optional kernel attributes. We need a decision about the integration of community-defined attributes. The problem here is that when we leave this completely open to the communities, we are expecting to lose interoperability quite soon. So we need some kind of guidelines there. And what we also need is to integrate collections into this picture, and this still has to be specified. There are ideas, there is previous work already done, but this has to be integrated, and then there has to be a decision about how this should be done. And this is the picture that was essentially developed in the Big R working group during the last year. And you see here the extracted parts where you have the FDO record in the middle and the left-hand side. But you also see there that the FDO has a PID, for instance. There is a reference to metadata. There are also descriptions about what is a type, because so far we only have spoken about attributes. Types are essentially a part of the FDO profile. So a set of attributes which describe how the type of a certain object is. We have these media type and media or MIME-like types there, and we have also the connection to operations in this picture. So there's a lot of information in there, and it therefore it's a bit overwhelming. But there is a document which describes all these parts, and also picks out certain aspects and describes it in the context of these aspects. So what we have to do essentially is to finalize this work in the next couple of weeks, actually, because it's already rather mature, this work. Also, the last thing which I've added during the last weeks was a description how media types fit into this picture. So there is a chapter in the examples. So in this document also there are 3 examples. One of them is about these media types. And one can see how this actually, why these media types are attributes with a key and a value again, and how this is constructed there. So this is an important example, of course. Others are a legacy example where people have described their attributes essentially via human readable nouns, and how one can transfer this into the FDO world. And the other is essentially the PID for instrument case, where we describe essentially a digital twin of a instrument by the FDO record. So nothing else is needed in this context there than the FDO record, and this is the digital twin of a certain, let's say, a certain description of an instrument, and this description is essentially the outcome of the RDA working group on PID for instruments. Okay, so then we have still some open issues in the technical part. A first one is something which is there we are quite far already, but there are still some things open. the general requirements for attributes in FDO. And as I said, the general pattern should be the key determines the value space. And this should be a general pattern. This means that everything we are looking or seeing in the FDO world has to be in this pattern. The key always has to determine the value space. What we don't know currently is whether this is actually true for all those examples we have in mind. This is something we also have to find out, and what we can do to overcome possible gaps there. And another topic here is, and this looks a bit like a minor topic, but there is a general problem behind it. How we can distinguish between inline and reference value. The general problem here is that FDO records should be short. They should not extend a certain amount of information directly, because the FDO records should be easily searchable. They should be very fast algorithms to look through them, and therefore they can't be too big. And this is the reason why we also want to have the possibility not to have the information directly in the record, but to reference them. But this then leads to a problem how to distinguish whether a value which is given is inline or is referenced. And there are some good ideas about that already. And there is also the possibility that this even can be found out automatically, but this process might be too heavy. It might be at the end then lead to too many hops and too many additional references internally. That it's not a good idea to do that, actually. Next is bootstrapping of types. This is behind that is the idea that essentially in the FDO world everything has to be an FDO. And then the question is, there are a lot of definitions about FDOs, how these definitions are defined. And that again then leads to the question: is there a kind of a master FDO which gives all the information, or at least has the possibility to give all the information that is needed for every kind of FDO? And or in other words, for example, what is the FDO that determines the value space of all type definitions as it is phrased here? Then there is
we're half an hour, so
okay.
Maybe you.
Yeah, I will go through these three other points quickly, and then we have.
Since we will have workshops on these things.
Yeah. Relations and mappings of attribute definitions. This essentially is the question of crosswalks, because we are in the area of metadata essentially, and in metadata we always have this problem, and this is not the only part. There is also the question how actually attribute definitions depend on each other. And there are hierarchical definitions, and therefore there are dependencies this way. Also, there is the possibility of versions of attribute definitions, and all this is covered behind this part. Then we found out that there are different types of types, and we have already some of them seen in this talk. There are kernel types, there are types of objects, but also there are attributes on profile definitions. They again have a type, and the question here is whether we should distinguish them, and if we do so, what does this imply? Are there also, for instance, also possible contradictions between types? So can a type exclude another type, and can a type imply another type? This kind of question we have to tackle, and then this was also mentioned, and I can go through this quite fast. The operations and FDOs are not completely understood. Therefore, we have to dig into this, and this will be done then in the next workshop in February, mid of February. So this is what I've prepared here, and if we go into certain of these topics, then I can also show some backup slides I've prepared.
Thanks, Ulrich. Maybe we stop the showing the slides so that we can see each other.
Yeah.
And then we three should try to get this interaction done. So, any comments? I hope comments on what we are going to do and should do. Mohammed, please.
Yes, about inline versus reference. I think that is something that depends a bit on the context in which it's used, in the sense that ideally you can have things where the result is either a kind of URL or the value itself, it's inline. And if you always accept that it's always either a URL or inline, then when you receive the things, you will see what is inline and what not. And it can be, depending on the user, in some cases, you want to have as much as possible inline. In other cases, for large object, maybe they won't be inline, but that could be a way to address the issue, I think.
Yeah, it's a part of it. So the major problem is essentially, and you mentioned it, that this has to be done automatically, and one then has to decide whether something can be a reference or not. So whether it's in the shape of, you said an URL, but we also have references given by PIDs, for instance, and there are possibly others which we can have. But behind that also is the problem that we might have references which are not going to an object which is described by the key of this pair. And this kind of stuff we have to distinguish from those which are actually the key or are in the value space of the key. But essentially you are right. It's a good idea to first of all have a look to the shape of the value we have, whether this might be a reference or not. And if it's not the case, then it's pretty clear. If it's the case, then one has to look at the key, whether the key allows, in this case, a reference. If this is not the case, then obviously there is an error. And this kind of stuff one has to do.
It depends a bit on the format, because in some formats, for example, if it's JSON, you can sort of encode both easily. If it's binary, you have an overhead to have the option that it's either a reference or directly the value.
Yeah.
I think we should not go too much technical detail here, Mohammed, but of course we need to address that in the working groups and other discussions. So please participate. I see Leon has a hands up. Leon, you are muted.
What is this? What is
yeah, now you're there.
Okay, great. Regarding the type or attribute registry, like you mentioned a few points that you think should be like discussed, how much detail, I guess, and how much data this should store. And so I would like to know what will these registries be used for? Just like this kind of minimal interoperable standard that Larry mentioned, as far as I understood him, or also like user-made additional metadata on top of the like kind of minimal standard FDO metadata? Is it like going to be very general, detailed? Everybody can basically define their own types with, I don't know, definitions of data types and whatnot, and then can puzzle together their custom FDO? Like what's the direction there?
Yeah, this is a question on essentially, and at the end, on the performance of the whole system. Because if you overload it with metadata in arbitrary detail, then you will end up in long decision processes, and this is certainly not in any case. Let's say not in any case that what we want. And also the more or less the decision so far in RDA, but also in FDO, is to keep it simple.
But really, we clearly identified 3 levels, right? If I understand that correctly, the question. Mandatory attributes, which are just a few, which everyone has to use, right? Like the link to the profile or so. But then we say they're optional. And this is a bit, how do you say, it was a bit of a discussion. What does it mean? Now, when we say optional, we mean those who are, where we can see as FDO Forum, that they are frequently used. Let me give an example like checksum. Where a checksum will probably be used by many people in the type of checksum. So why not standardize it so that everyone can use it, and then you have a level of interoperability. But then, Leon, you come and say, you want to make your own category, add your own category somewhere in the registry. Well, who should prevent you to do it? I mean, we cannot, right? And should not. So it's up to you, the communities or the individuals, what they're doing. The question is always, how interoperable is this then? But that's an old discussion, nothing new. Larry, I see you have a number.
Yeah, you said most of what I was going to say,
so
I'll that's fine. So I'll just emphasize that there should be, by my view, no such thing as type police. No. And it would be a community level effort to agree on those things that are useful. And I suspect a lot of this will be domain specific. I mean, we'll go back to the TCP/IP example again. There's many ways to use the ability to move packets around the network. There should be many ways to use a framework in which we attempt to allow machines to investigate information objects. with as few requirements as possible.
Leon, you had another point? Your hand is still up, or was it?
If I may, I would have a follow-up question, but if others want to say something.
No, I have one remark here. So one open question, and that Ulrich mentioned that, is how do we integrate already community specifications that are already done? So Carol, what is your, I always forgot the name of your, well, is it ontology or not in the biomedical stuff? You have invested a lot of time, and I looked at it and saw some of the different, yes.
EDAM.
Yes. So there is a lot by different communities has been done on specifying concepts and so forth. Well, you know, how do we want to link up to these things, since people don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So that's an open question still, which we have to settle together with the communities. Sorry, Leon. Now your second point.
Yes, so I've in my own bubble, I've been thinking about like software that should help people standardize their terminology and standardize their data schema and structure and data types and whatnot. And what came to my mind was kind of a bit of a separation between, you know, the human readable part of some kind of type or class and the like data structure, constraint, schema, whatever part. So my thinking was that people should first be able to agree on like the same human readable information, like a description, definition, synonyms, examples, and so on, all this kind of text, if you will. And then they may still connect different kind of data types to it, maybe just slightly different data types. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels like this should be considered, whether every like collection of the description, definition, examples, and so on, whether this kind of thing for every class should always be connected to an actual data type that can directly be validated as a value, or if maybe there should be a possibility to separate the two.
Ulrich or Larry, comment?
Yes, so a direct comment is that whenever you have human readable metadata, you don't have the performance issue so much. Therefore, you can dereference it. You can put it out of the record and put it somewhere else. But again, there you should follow the structure that the key essentially determines the value space. Then you also have the possibility that later on, when the machine actions are possible. But what I found interesting is this this distinction and the idea to just to first of all think which should be machine readable and which should be human readable, and then to separate the metadata from this viewpoint. And yeah, perhaps it's a good idea to do so.
I just had a comment in there that ideally you would want to derive the human readable from the machine readable so that they didn't drift apart.
Okay. Yep. Mohammed, you have your hands up again.
A comment on this. Basically, I was part of an attempt to create metadata and so on, and I strongly feel that the type should be part of the definition. If you have this similar thing, because if I understood correctly, what you are advocating is separating the dictionary, and there are the ontology, just the terms from the actual types, which is done by some people. But I think it's a bad idea, because when you if you have a different type, really as for example, it's a vector or so. If it's a different type of floating point, for example, that is probably okay, but really a different type physical, a string instead of a set of number or something like that, then it's a different thing. And I think one should separate and use maybe related concept, but they should be two separate things with different values. That's my opinion.
Yes,
but
we agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But behind that is a more general point. As it turns out in this discussion and in my slides also, is that we are going more and more into the direction of classifying metadata, and this is something which is not for most of us not the main main focus so far, or has been the main focus so far. So we really will need in the next future really metadata experts in our group, more metadata experts. So Dan, for instance, is certainly a metadata expert, but there will be a lot of additional work that has to be done, and there we need this expertise more and more. I think it's my opinion. So you are kindly required to join.
Yes, indeed. I see Mark. Hello, Mark. You have your hands up.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry, I was a bit late, so I've come a bit late to the party, but I've just realized that Arafan has pretty much said what I was going to say, which is to have a mixture of standard sets of metadata which describe something as an FDO, and then either allow people to add their own triples underneath that as much as they like to do their own domain-specific definitions, right. Or I think, as somebody else was suggesting, that you use link data to link out, but then you end up with the problems of identity. So my gut feel is have a set of standard things, triples that you put in there. You could maybe use Shackle to verify that, and then add a whole bunch of other ones completely at the liberty of whatever people want to do. And then you have the kind of a nice balance between the two, prescriptive, restricted versus open and completely Wild West.
Yeah, Mark, that's, I think, what we discussed so far. So it seems, if I understood you correctly, that we agree here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna just add up. We also said,
Stian. Yeah, Stian.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, we also agreed to have the kind of level of indirection, right? So you can say, this is the type with this type system, and therefore these are the shapes or whatever that applies to it.
Yeah.
But
semantic web
that means
stuff.
We have to agree how to express that one. Yeah. And I've been looking through how to express profiles, for instance, because if that glue needs to be very light so that we can express that in any FDO record.
I think we indeed, Stian, if I just may come in here, we need to, as Ulrich also formulated, we need to formalize these things very explicitly, right? Since talking is good, but at the end it has to be written down. So let's see how that we can get this done.
Yeah, and that's my main feedback to most of the specs, right? They have also good requirements, but you still don't know quite how to do it, right? So we've come to the step where we know what you need to do. Now we need to do it, right? And maybe it's not going to be the best solution right away, but it will probably be one that works well enough, right?
Yeah. Leon, still another one. Leon, you are muted.
No, yeah. A bit more on the type registry. So have you considered like making stuff advanced for units, so that for the classical example of centimeters, millimeters, and meters, that you can like have some kind of vocabulary in the registry to express this kind of base thing, and then like have it being recalculated between the different orders of magnitude and whatnot. And the second thing, do you consider like kind of top level ontologies, maybe recommending people to put their own types below top level, like attach them at the bottom of top level ontologies, so that stuff can be like is a bit harmonized at the upper level. I mean, enforcing that would be, but I guess that's not practical. But yeah, units and top level ontologies and type registries.
So
I think it's
yeah.
you.
So about units, we discussed quite often actually in the past in RDA already, also in the big working group, and we have people who are really interested in this. There are already some steps into this direction done at NIST and also at the German Physikalisch-Technische Bundesanstalt, which is a organization which actually also defines units. And this all was already done to a certain level, but finally there was not a the last step was not done. It was not decided to set up a registry and then to really define these values. I think it's mainly because of lack of funding, essentially, because it's a lot of work and it's a bit of stupid work. So this is not what one can simply do without any kind of funding, I think.
I think only, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I think we need to be careful with the scope of what we are doing. So there's a good comment by someone who started that interaction. You know, there, as Uri said, PTP and NIST are also working on a completely new, how do you say, setup. How would you say that in good English for defining units and so. So we need to be careful that FDO with raising expectations with respect to the FDO Forum. I mean, we need to say this again and again. We need to be careful.
Yes, and the other topic sounds interesting. It's a bit into the direction of bootstrapping. I think these high level and or top level types, but perhaps it's more general. I don't see the real scope of this question currently. Perhaps this is something we also have to keep in mind and have a deeper look at that.
Yeah. Stian, do you still have your hands up or is it an old one?
No, that's from before, sorry.
Yep, okay. Well, Mario.
Hello. Just a comment. All this discussion about top-level ontologies, etc., is something that I still not able to mix with FDO things. In which sense? If you look at all the work, all the discussion about linked open data, you see a lot of reference, a lot of work about ontologies, top level ontologies, etc. Instead, in FDO, we focus more on more limited, in my opinion, understanding of what are the type, the meaning, the ontologies. So I think we have to clarify this point in the sense, if we start speaking about top-level ontologies or ontology in general, I think we have the risk to make very complex things about. I agree that we need to, in the typing, we should be clear about the temperature, for example, is in Celsius or Fahrenheit. So a minimal set of ontology definition is needed, obviously. But I really stay away from all those thinking about ontologies in general and top-level ontologies in particular. Just an observation.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. I mean, it's just a personal view now here. I share your view here, Mario. So when Dan and myself and a few others worked on this semantic mapping stuff, we had an interaction with the lady from EBI in Cambridge, close to Cambridge, and and we got the clear impression also from other discussions that you have to start. You have to be very careful and be pragmatic. Start from the bottom. So, and I think yes, Helen Parkinson. Thank you, Carol. And we need to be careful. Start from the bottom with what we first need in the first year. The point is that some people, Stian mentioned that also earlier, some people are now working concretely on FDO's implementations, right? And obviously we'll get some money from ministries to do something. And then we have to deliver. We can't start with talking about ontologies. No, we have to start with bottom-up stuff. And then when we understand the game, and when we understand how to link up, for example, to the ontologies from different S3 projects and so forth, then we can do more stuff here. But that will take a bit of time. That's my personal view, right?
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
To start from the bottom is the best way.
Moment, you again. Seems that we get stuck in this type issue and ontology issues.
I also wanted to say that ontologies are one can get lost very easily, and they are not so useful. And they are difficult and also to understand the details, even when you do a lot of things, of the consequences, and that makes them difficult to use, and then they are useless, and their usefulness diminishes. And having, at least when I did it was Nomad metadata, we tried to have something concrete and data there that you store, and really have trying to describe also data also with implicit relationships and so on, and not really define everything in the ontology. So it's just data format like description.
Well, indeed, Nomad is another good example for practical work, right? So starting from all the different ab initio models, and then see, where to bridge between the different parameters, physical energies, and so forth, right? And that's really data-driven.
Yeah, basically, I was the one developing the metadata.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes.
Great to know. Great to know. Okay.
Also want to agree on this on using more lightweight vocabularies rather than heavy ontologies. So we want to keep the kind of consumption in mind rather than reasoning, right? So that would be basically which attributes can I expect to find, which type is this, and that's it. No fancy, is in a massive hierarchy or whatever, because that's where everybody disagrees. So that should not be common.
Yeah, Stian, thanks. I mean, what you say is very clear, that then you raise the requirements for mapping, easy mapping, how do you say, features, facilities, whatever. So that's a shift to mapping, which I think will become more and more an issue. So how to manage the different mappings, how to share mappings and all this stuff. And that's what Dan and myself and a few others did in this EOS project. Whether it was good or not is another question, but we see that coming. Yep. Any other point? There are so many other points. There were a couple of discussions in the chat. Maybe there's something which still should be said or so. Then please raise the issue. So then there is no, Arafan. And Larry. Arafan,
I had a question on a completely different topic just against the presentation. DIN was mentioned as a standards body. Right. And I've worked with them and had pretty good experiences with them in years past. Is the intention to use them as a way to get this spec in the fullness of time into ISO? Are they an on-ramp through to ISO? That's the thinking. I just wanted to verify that, because that
right. So we have meeting with ISO people as well. I always forgot the numbers of the subgroups and so forth. That was at the Dublin conference, and it was clear that the next step is that we need a roadmap. They call it a roadmap, right? And that has some specific steps. So when it seems that we get considerable money in Germany, and that's why we relate with DIN first, so that we need to work out what are the steps towards standards. And as Stian mentioned, our requirement specifications have a lot of, space for implementation. So we need to pin down things more and more. And that's what we need to do, step by step, piece by piece. And in parallel do implementation, since I think we all share the knowledge that you need to do something to refine your specs, right? So you need to work on things. So that's what we are going to do. And the DIN people we have a memorandum of understanding with the DIN people. And the intention is indeed to bring, there's some noise. Mario, I think you are the noise maker, Mario D'Amore. Yes, please, thank you. So the intention is that we work together with DIN, and DIN puts real manpower, or person power, I should say. So we talk about 2 persons that really do all these detailments and so forth, and also interact with ISO, with the ISO groups, right? So that's the intention, Arafan.
Thank you, Peter. That it's a task not to be underestimated. So having some people who know that is a good thing. That can take a long time.
Oh, exactly. And that's the point why we really need money to do this kind of job. Larry.
Yeah. So I was going to raise this towards the end of the second hour, but this seemed an appropriate point now. So I've been talking with various people and through the chat, including Sharif Islam, who is knowledgeable about this stuff, part of the DISCO project, about how these future, this was intended to be the first of N meetings about the roadmap and general how to proceed. And this has been a good discussion. A lot of it, for many of us, it's the discussion we've been having for the last couple of years. So I would like to propose, I believe, and look for general reactions from the group, that we do schedule future meetings like this. The turnout has certainly been gratifying, but that they be on specific topics. And one of the goals, perhaps, of this meeting, as we go on, would be to define what those topics are. And we need to, as I tried to point out in my initial first set of points, we really need to bring practice into this. So either use cases, or preferably people are actually doing things along these lines, and try to start making those connections. I think that's the way to make progress.
Thanks, Larry. I should mention here that we have a bit of organization in the FDO Forum, that in the steering committee, who are discussing the set of first workshops. And Stian, don't be surprised. The collection issue is one of the first, so I have to contact you tomorrow. So we have a first set of topics ready, since we need now to start working on these, like with Stian or so, to work on these and how to set it up. But there is, I think we have the next 2-3 meetings, so on kind of decided, since we need to start preparing these. But then, so after, what is it, May or so, then there are suggestions, and we will put them open, send them to you all via our email list, right? That's the way we can do it. So, and put it on the website. So there are suggestions. We're discussing them right now, but they will be set for comments and so forth, of course, on the website.
So could we put together like a timeline of that, right? Because like you said, we have a few of the next meetings already ready, but
that's what we're discussing, Stian.
Yeah,
yes.
If we can write that down as well, maybe we can just put in the minutes for now.
Yes, and Stian, you will accept that we first need to have a decision internally, which will be come next week or so. And then
it will be a draft. Right?
Yeah. Then we put it out, and as said, so we need to discuss. So I will have to discuss tomorrow with you on the collection issue, right? Since we need to discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the main feedbacks from the big and lovely FDO conference, is that we do need to make our time. But I don't think everything needs to lots of time. Some things are almost ready to go.
Right. So you will see it coming, but please register to be sure that you are informed. Register at the FDO Forum, so that then you will automatically come onto our email list, right? If you didn't do so until now, do it. It doesn't mean anything else than getting emails at this moment, right? So, okay, is there any other point you would like to raise or so? Then it's not the case. Well, then let me again say that this roadmap document is out there for comments. It's on the website, so you can please make comments, all kinds of things. We will listen to the recording. We'll look into the issue, the Google Doc, which Carol pushed us to. So we will do this, and we'll extract some major items, but put this all public so that you can see it. Stian already mentioned the workshop series, so we intend indeed to have workshops every month, maybe, but that depends on the support we get, maybe even more. We will have lectures every month, lectures on specific topic. Peter, I saw your hand. Let me just finish. So we will also have lecture, as we started, on specific topics which are of interest for FDOs, but not directly relevant for implementation and so forth, right? And of course, we would like to invite everyone who is like Mohammed, for example, and so forth, who was deeply interested in specific discussions, come up and mention it to us, so that we can integrate you, if you want, into our working group discussions, where we will discuss intensively about certain issues. Peter, you have the hands up.
Yeah, just one minor remark from my side. If I remember your roadmap document correctly, it has been identified as one of the major missing things, that we did not manage to involve the semantic web community in the past properly. And I propose to have a workshop together with the semantic web community on the conceptual model Ulrich has presented. I like especially the simple version of it very much, but it should be aligned with activities in the semantic web community. For instance, the FDOF model proposed by Luis Bonino and so forth. And it would be good, I think, especially when I see this command in the roadmap document, that we miss to involve the semantic communities, that we should have a workshop together with this community on the conceptual model.
Thanks, Peter. I can tell you that one item on our list is a joint workshop with the science posting folks, and there may be others as well. We have to prepare this very carefully, so that we converge and not fight each other. So, and I think that's the big issue. So we had first discussion with Herbert von Example, that has to be intensified indeed. So it will come. The question is then, Peter, when can we do this, right? Yep. So it will come. Okay. Semantic arts. I just see Mark Wharton, semantic arts. There's a funny discussion currently going on in Germany. Hans-Günther, do you want to make a point here? So I agree with you, Mark. Hans-Günther, do you want to make a point about this as an example about the discussion we have, or you have, with some arts people? And we had them on in line. Is Hans-Günther still there?
Oh, sorry, Peter, I think you might have misunderstood.
Oh.
Semantics Arts are a company in Colorado.
Oh, I see. Oh,
yeah,
I see.
They're practitioners, not artists. Yeah, they
Sorry.
They do semantics for a living rather than for academics.
Okay,
so
good, Mark.
They're very good pragmatists. I just think that they might
please
get
help. Put this into the Google Doc, right? I just put the link. Someone asked for the link.
I'll do that. I'll do the link in there. Yeah, as well.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm very much into the doc, into the chat. Sorry.
I'm very much in favor of arts included in these things. STEAM, not STEM. You say.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
So I have a question, Peter. I've just looked at the website, the forum website, about how you're encouraging people to join the working groups, but it's not clear how you join the working group.
You can send an email to either me, Larry, Ulrich, or whatsoever.
I think you need some sort of more process with a form or something that enables you to do that. But at the moment it's a bit artisanal, I would say, rather than kind of generalized, because it requires those people to be able to monitor their mailboxes, and they may not be able to, for example.
Thank you.
So you need to streamline that a little bit, because you should get a lot of people wanting to join up.
I hope so. Well, there is one, as I said, we need to improve the support, but this is a hard job. And there is one way. I mean, send an email, simple email to the secretary of FDO Forum, and then basically it's Tina and me, we will know how to process that email.
Yeah,
so, but your form idea is nice.
Yeah, if we just adapted, as Stian said, the organizational membership form to a personal membership, and they could say which working are you interested in participating in and why, and then you're good to go, right?
Yeah. No, I understand your comment, Carol, and it's just a matter of work. So Tina will leave us. She gives support to us. She will leave us at the end of this hard point for us. We get another person, or maybe two other half persons. So we need to get them into the game. So yes, we'll try to do our best. Good. Then let me thank you all, also Larry and Ulrich, especially. Let me thank you all for your comments, and I hope we see each other again. Please register, send an email or so, and we'll put you onto the list. Thanks a lot, and have a good year in 2023. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.